Hi there, welcome back to my channel. Today I have another review for you, and this is for Rayanne Thane's The Path to Sunshine Cove. This book is the second book in the Cape Sanctuary series. The first book, by the way, was The Sea Glass Cottage, which I think came out about a year ago. And I read that book and I loved that book as well, but these books are written as standalone, but if you like a small town community type feel to when you read books, you will definitely enjoy The Sea Glass Cottage as well. But regarding this book, which by now I will have popped up the review video, the book cover, we find a touching story of someone named Jessica. Her name is Jessica Clayton, and she finds in this story that home can be in one location. See, I'm not going to give you this review as close to maybe my written review in some areas. It'll be a little bit different because I want to tell you about Jess, okay? Jess has a younger sister named Rachel. When they were children, they were very, very close. Rachel was, I think, 7 years younger, and she always followed Jess everywhere they went, and they were doing just fine. However, and this is what I don't mention in my written review, I do mention that there was a tragedy, and I will be a little vague, but there was a horrid tragedy that happened when they were children. And when this tragedy happened, of course, their lives completely changed. So how things changed in their lives, I won't tell you here. You can find that out when you read the book. But it did cause Rachel and Jess to become distant. So as the story starts to develop, Jess, who had a very successful business as a downsizer, where she would travel to different locations, she would get jobs, and she would go into homes, and she would help the homeowner to downsize. So she has her most current job, and that is in a town called Cape Sanctuary. Well, the reason that I brought Rachel up is because that's where Rachel lives. She lives in Cape Sanctuary. So now Jess has not only the opportunity to start a new job with the customer, and her name is Eleanor, but also to possibly reconnect with Rachel and to deal with the situation that caused them to separate as sisters and to develop completely different lives. Now, we start to see different levels of the story. One aspect of the story is Eleanor herself, okay? She's a widow, lost her husband, I think, maybe 2 years previously, and is still dealing with that loss, but she's dealing with something else that she hasn't told her son about. Speaking of her son, we have her son Nate, and we have Nate and his teen daughter Sophie. Then we have Rachel and her husband, who have just learned of a diagnosis about their 2-year-old son. So you've got these parallel stories in the pages of this singular book. So let's break it down a little bit. What we have here is Jess is a very compassionate, sweet, loving person. So she's drawn into Eleanor and Eleanor's story and Eleanor's difficulty. And I think Eleanor was married for 40 years, which is kind of scary for me because I've been married for 39 years, but Eleanor lost her husband after 40 years. And so she's dealing with helping Eleanor cope with that. So her job is kind of part therapist, and I kind of like that. Then we see that as Eleanor meets Nate, as Jess meets Nate, Eleanor's son, you can see that there's a magnetic pull that Nate and Jess have. But Jess is like, there's no way that I'm going to be drawn in to any relationship because I'm going on to my next job. I think this job was going to take 2 to 3 weeks. So, she already had her next jobs lined up. Then we have, as I mentioned, Nate's daughter, Sophie. And Jess and Sophie hit it off really well because Nate is a fireman. He works long shifts. So there are times when Sophie is at Eleanor's home so that Sophie's not left alone all the time. So in the process of Jess helping Eleanor to downsize, she begins to get to know Sophie. Then we go back to Rachel and her husband, who were high school sweethearts. They were in love, but they had 2 daughters. I think they were like 6 and 8, but they have a 2-year-old who has a recent diagnosis, and this started to add stress to their marriage. Now, Rachel is an Instagram influencer, and Rachel has built her life as something perfect that fits into a box. So having a young boy with a lifelong diagnosis takes that perfectness, and I know that's not a word, but takes that perfect little life that Rachel had carved out for herself, and it takes it out of that box. So now Rachel is dealing with marital difficulties. So this story, while it is secondly billed as romance, is equally and first billed as women's fiction because of the parallel stories told within this book. Now, I like the way this book is written because you have all these points of view. You have Jess's, you have Nate's, you have Sophie's, and you have Rachel's. And I think even a couple of times we have Eleanor's point of view. But don't worry, you're not going to get lost. You're not going to feel any disconnect. What you might feel is what I felt while reading this book is the pull and everything coming together and becoming very, very well written, woven tightly, a very well done story. And then I want to go back to the romance aspect of this book, because if this is going to be a romance which would entail a happily ever after, how will this bode for Jess when she lives in a deluxe Airstream and she travels all over the country from job to job to job? Can she set down roots not only with a man that she might fall in love with, but how will this impact the life of a 13-year-old child? Jess can't just have a quote-unquote fling, because you got to consider the effect that this would have on Sophie, the teenager. So I liked kind of like a little air of mystery when I was reading this book, because you're like, how is this going to work out? How is Rayanne Thane, the author, going to make it believable that Jess could possibly give up a life on the road to become involved in a relationship where she would have a teen stepdaughter? Done flawlessly. It was a flawless book. It really, really was. So I love this book. It comes out on March 30th. I'm filming this on the 25th. So I will hold this video review over until release date. But the review is on my blog, because I'm doing a blog tour. It's on NetGalley and it's also on Goodreads. And then on the 30th, it will go on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and other social media sources like Instagram and so forth. But there you have it, The Path to Sunshine Cove, a great story by Rayanne Thane. Highly recommended if you like emotional stories that do deliver a happy ending in the end. Okay, so I know it doesn't sound right, happy ending in the end, but there you have it. All right, that's it. Thank you. Bye-bye. See you next time.